Okay, now let's quickly review what we've talked about so far. First, we have our sprites, where when we import, when we have the setting set to 2D mode in Unity, when you import an image, it will default to the sprite texture type. Right, so this is new, and we have different sort of sprites we can use. If the image is a complete character, then we can just set it to a single sprite mode. But if you want to animate it inside Unity, you kind of want the different parts of the character broken up in an image like this. And after we import it into Unity, we make sure that the sprite mode is multiple. You can click on the sprite editor, and this is where we define where each part is. Now remember, everything that we define here becomes a part that we can tweak inside the editor. So that's very good. Right. And again, you can click on slice and then let Unity automatically do that for you, or you can adjust it by yourself. You can also just sort of drag a rectangle to define a new part, right? It's a new slice. And again, we can define the pivot point as well. And this is used, right? So for example, we had the pivot point down here for the left fin. And you can see that when I rotate, it's rotating based on the pivot point here, right? So that's quite useful. The same thing with the tail. When we rotate the tail, it's rotating around the pivot point that we defined in the slice tool, right? As you can see, it's down there. So it's very useful, very cool. And obviously, you can sort of zoom in and out, change if you just want to see the alpha. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to slice them up without seeing the colors. And when you create an image to use, just make sure that they allow the parts to be sliced into rectangle shapes. So for example, if this thing overlaps with that, let's say if the eye is all the way up here, then you can't have a clean rectangle slice. So just be aware of that. So I made quite a bit of empty rooms. It's not optimized, but it's just a little bit cleaner. I'm going to close that. I'm not going to apply. So that's our sprite. Okay, once we have that, we can reconstruct the character accordingly. We just drag the different parts into the scene. Right. Now I don't need a separate eye, so I delete that. So we have our fish after we've constructed it. And the next step was to add an animation to the fish. And we open up our animation window. You can do it from the window tab, animation, or click on this little button here, and then you can add a new tab, animation. So I just need one. And we can click on this drop-down menu and create a new clip. And what that does is it creates a new animation, swim, which is the one defined here. And we can use the record button to record the fish on different frames. We talked about the frames. Oh, and I don't think we talked about samples. So you can see that this is how fast it's being animated. If I change sample to 30, it's going to go slower. Now, each second only has 30 frames, and we've defined 60 frames here. So that means to go through the entire 60 frame animation, it's going to take 2 minutes. I mean 2 seconds. But if we make that 120, so within 1 second, we're going to go through 120 frames, and our entire loop is a 60 frame loop. So it takes half a second to finish animating the whole thing. Right. So I usually like to just keep it at 60. That's fine. Right. Okay. So we have our animation. We also briefly talked about the animator, which controls the animations attached to this object. Right. And now we only have one, so we don't have to worry too much about it. But it's good to know that it's there. And if you pay attention to this little part when you're in the animator, click on the swim animation, you can also adjust the speed here. If you do 2, then it's going to go twice as fast. Right, so that's just another place where you can tweak things. It's a bit different type of setup from the tweaking the frame rate directly, but it's also it's a tool to use. Set that back to 1. Okay, so I think that's everything we talked about. But yeah, so this is how you get an animated character inside Unity.